One of the guys responsible, I should say the guy responsible for the executive branch agency, the Secretary of the Treasury that is to try to maintain a strong economy, is the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, who joins the Gary and Shannon show. First of all, Secretary, thanks for your time today.
Great. Good to be here with both of you.
Hey, let me ask first. This morning we got the Congressional Budget Office's score on this, and it says that this bill, including the recent amendment, would increase federal budget deficits by $1.7 trillion over 10 years. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we obviously don't agree with that. So, the reconciliation instructions are for $1.5 trillion. And again, that's comparing it to the baseline. We would argue that we should compare it to the current policy, which is a $500 billion difference. So that brings the number down to $1 trillion. And we think there will be close to $2 trillion or more of growth. So we think that by the time we're done with the appropriate growth, this will be $1 trillion positive to pay down the debt.
You've been in California for a couple days. You've been answering questions from Republicans, and I'm sure a lot of that has been about the state income tax deduction. How did this get left off? How did this end up on the cutting room floor here?
Well, I think the issue is, and I've been a California resident, so I'm sympathetic to the issue. I think we fundamentally believe that we should get the federal government out of the business of subsidizing state taxes. So we've tried to have the right balance here of making sure that we do have some type of limited property deduction. We do have the interest deduction, and we have tax breaks for the middle class. But we do understand that rich people in California are most likely going to have their taxes go up.
Is there one specific aspect of the plan, the way it stands right now, that you think is most impactful, that would most help taxpayers and the economy?
I think there's two aspects, and they're equally important. One is the reduction of the business tax rate to 20% and converting from a worldwide system to a territorial system. We think that is absolutely critical in making our businesses competitive. We have one of the highest tax rates in the world, and we tax on worldwide income. There's trillions of dollars of profits that are offshore that will be brought back onshore. And the other aspect of it that's just as critical is the president wants to make sure we have a middle-income tax cut, putting money back into people's pockets.
A lot of people think this is it is very friendly to corporations. What do you say to the critics who say, hey, listen, we had trickle-down economics. It didn't work?
Well, I would argue this isn't about trickle-down economics. This is about making our companies competitive with the rest of the world, and I think that's something that most people understand, that we can compete better than anybody if we're on a level playing field, but our companies can't compete when they have one hand tied behind their back. And as it relates to the tax burden, many economists show that 70% of the tax burden by corporations are passed on to the worker. So the reason why we call this a Tax Cut and Jobs Act is because this is about increasing workers' wages and increasing workers' opportunities.
This does eliminate some regular deductions that a lot of people are used to taking, and one that didn't make the final cut was capping the tax break for the 401k plans. I know it's not in there, but can you explain what the reasoning was behind it or would be behind it to cap the tax breaks for 401ks?
Again, it's something that the president felt very strongly about that we not change, so the current version doesn't have it in there. We think that having people save for retirement through their 401ks is critical. I think the only reason why people were talking about it was just a way of raising revenues, but that's not the area we want to be raising revenues from.